So I didn't want to leave that being too over pessimistic. Back to Checker. The first 3 sections of this, we've looked at how some of the bigger money redesign, rethink efforts have taken on the high school challenge. The approaches, some of the thought movements that have come and gone along the way. Maybe not gone yet, but so at this point, before we get into actual real needs and solutions, I wanted to take a break and relate to you a summary that was written by Checker Finn. Checker Finn's been in the education policy movement for a long time. He's got the emeritus title to him, and he's had that for a few years now. But he wrote, and this is 2 years old, one of the great summaries, and you know, I've read so many of these about the problem, the challenge of high school, but he put together such a great list that it's worth going on record here and just going through it point by point and relaying them to you. I could just tell you to read it, but I think I want to go through it with you. So if it feels redundant to you, you could skip over it maybe. For you younger readers, listeners, watchers, pay real close attention because there's some good stuff here. Okay, let's just dig in right here. Checker Finn's The Gordian Knot of High School Reform. I know nobody who denies that high school education in America sorely needs an overhaul. Achievement scores are flat, whether one looks at NAEP, PISA, TIMSS, SAT, or the ACT. Graduation rates are up, but incidents of padding, cheating, and fraud are appearing more and more often. Scads of kids enter college ill-prepared to succeed there. Scads of others enter the workforce without the skills to succeed there either, at least not without lots of repair work. The military is rejecting many who would like to enlist. Upward mobility is more or less stagnant. And there are abundant signs of social and personal dysfunction among young people during and after high school. And that's without even getting into the most heinous stuff like shootings. Yet it turns out to be extremely hard to formulate any sort of coherent plan for reform at the high school level, and harder still to implement it. We've tried so many different things. Small high schools, virtual high schools, charter high schools, girls' high schools, early college high schools, thematic high schools, more advanced placement and international baccalaureate and dual enrollment, a few, more selective admissions, high schools, end-of-course exams, statewide graduation tests, personalized learning, attempts to transcripts, or alternatives to transcripts, multiple pathways. I really could go on. Each one of these made sense at various times and places, and all of them are underway at various places today. But it's sort of a big mess, a Tower of Babel, or Noah's Ark of reforms. And in the big picture, it's just not doing very much good. So in 2 very good paragraphs there, Checker has summarized what we just spent the last, I think, 30 minutes of video, perhaps, trying to talk about. But coming up here, he lists 10, as he says, underlying problems, dilemmas, or unresolved principles that get in the way of major progress. Or, as the title says, the Gordian Knot. Point 1. Confusion and dissension over the end product. And he talks about college and career ready. Doesn't bear much scrutiny. Self-respecting liberals and most educators want everyone to go to college or simply can't imagine anything else. They're neglecting. Our best high schools are neglecting other kids. Our worst high schools aren't preparing anyone for anything. 2, high schools have essentially no say over the preparation of their entering students. And we're going to talk about this in the next video or a couple, in the science of reading, which is a big part of how so many kids fall behind. We'll get into that at length. But for Checker in high school, it's when you have no control over what comes in, you lack clarity about what you're trying to produce. Well, you have a right to be muddled. 3, we'll talk about this one at length. We're in the midst of savage confusion between the traditional metrics of course credits and Carnegie units on the one hand, and standards and competencies on the other. Which is the right way to gauge students' progress, success, and readiness to graduate? Most states and districts are trying to have it both ways. Another fundamental muddle. I said we'll get into that one too. 4, we're afraid of denying kids diplomas. It's well and good to want all young people to earn diplomas, documents that matter in our society and the future lives of individuals, but it's quite another thing to conclude, whether for humanitarian or political reasons or both, that almost everybody must receive them, earned or not. 5, hence our policies focus overmuch on raising graduation rates, which leads to all manner of finagling, fudging, hedging, and downright cheating. 6, for historical, political, and civil rights reasons, we're allergic to tracking at the secondary level, even the sophisticated, flexible, and non-discriminatory kinds that they do in other advanced countries. And Checker leaves it at that. 7, which has caused us to also kill off vocational education. While there are many worthy efforts underway to revive it, retitled Career and Technical Education, deep down most educators still see it as inferior to what, back in the days of tracking, was usually called college prep. And I will remind everybody that this was written in May of 2018. I think there's been a little change on that. I think there's been a lot of change on that. But we're still a long way off. So, okay, if you slept through the first 7, here's point 8. And this is the big one that we're working on, as are most people, I think, but really in a more methodical way than they are. So, in Checker's words, 8. For millions of kids, high school, at least the academic part, is too damn boring and pointless. Why are they being told to study calculus? Why is history so dull? Why does chemistry or third-year French have to do with their lives? Sure, they say it's important for my future, says a not untypical student, but there are so many other things that actually engage my interest at this point in life. And Checker adds, keep in mind too Amanda Ripley's insight, kids in other countries go to high school to learn stuff, while a great many young Americans see high school as a venue for sports, socializing, and such. So just toss in at this point that, yeah, we can have it both ways. This is America. We invent things that have both, allow us to have our cake and eat it too. We have rockets that go up and come back down and land, and we use them again, over and over. We can do this. Back to Checker. 9. In so many schools, the considerable counseling that kids at this age need and ought to be getting is instead minimal to useless, generally boiled down to course scheduling and college applications. As family falters, this void worsens. Too many students are left to ask, who is there? Who that I trust and can confide in to help me with the big questions about my life? I'm just throwing at this point that's not totally universal. I know principals who really work hard, and certainly counselors and teachers who connect with students and really go out of their way to try to get them new opportunities. Especially in the bigger schools where they have a little bit more money to do that. But even a school like this that has minimal, where I live, minimal administrative leeway. We see we always go out and cook for the graduating seniors, and you could pick out the kids that are probably gotten the most trouble, and the relationship that they have with the assistant principal, and every year after year we see them say, "Hey, we made it through. It was rough, but we made it through," and they're happy about that, at least in the end. So I didn't want to leave that being too over pessimistic. Back to Checker. 10. Finally, we encounter the usual grown-up bickering over control, power, jobs, and budgets. Is high school really the exclusive property of K-12 districts? Why isn't it? And the resources and decision-making that come with it, shared with employers, union-based apprenticeship programs, community colleges, and more. Why not many more independent and charter schools? If we're serious about career and technical education, how do we divide budgets and control between college preps and CTE providers? And as some boundaries blur, dual credit and early college being prime examples, how do we apportion responsibility and keep taxpayers from paying twice? And Checker sums up with, a Gordian knot indeed, accolades and blessings to any who can find the thread and unsnarl it, or simply sharpen their blades and slice through. So over the years, scores of such complaints have been written, or designed, videoed, some beautiful videos. Some from people who have made it their mission to change school or to change high school. In particular, some fancy ones from XQ and some written ones from the leader of XQ, all lamenting high school. I think this one gets it all done in the least words and says the most, so I wanted to share that with you. So coming up in the next videos, we'll take an even deeper look at the requirements and opportunities ahead. So dig in, stay tuned, enjoy.